Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming to the Authors at Google event today. It's my pleasure to present Jesse Ziff Cool to Google. She's the author of Simply Organic, a cookbook for sustainable, seasonal, and local ingredients. She has been dedicated to sustainable agricultural and cuisine for more than 30 years as a writer, restaurateur, spokesperson, mother, and consumer. She's also the author of Toast, 60 Ways to Butter Your Toast and More, and the Really Truly Honest to Goodness One Pot Cookbook. Simply Organic encourages home cooks to embrace organics as a lifestyle rather than a fad. It includes 150 simple recipes organized seasonally to ensure that the freshest, ripest ingredients enhance the flavors of each dish. Some of her recipes are filet mignon with smashed potatoes and leek sauce for early spring, fava beans and orzo salad in summer, pumpkin raisin bread pudding during autumn, and pear, brie, and olive tart in winter. Scattered through the book are profiles on farmers and producers who reveal how they are making it easier and more environmentally friendly for consumers to eat organically. And she also has about 150 seeds, organic seeds, that she's going to be giving away at the very end. So stay tuned for that. And she'll probably be giving those away to people who don't have their laptop opens and give her the most undivided attention. So with that, please join me in welcoming Jesse Ziff Cool.
Thanks. Yes. We're going to talk about the book, but we're going to talk more about some issues to demystify this terrible dilemma we're in about what food is about. And the remarkable thing is that having started working with organic, local, seasonal, green, all of these issues in about 1976, to now be in front of you trying to explain or help all of us understand something that really is nothing more than just real food. And it's kind of a sad situation that we have found ourselves, especially in the Western world, where we've forgotten what it means to really keep it simple, which is why that book is called Simply Organic, and to steam a little food, or to roast food, or to braise, or to eat something raw. We have gotten detached, many of us, from how simple it is to cook and what it means to sit at a table, to share something really delicious, to remember that the aromas and the textures and those wonderful sensual qualities of food can never be lost. And there's something, when you think about it, are shared all over the world. So though we think local, really the issues around food, and in many ways the politics of food, are a universally connecting global issue that bring us all together, sitting at a table, and sharing our lives and love and care and passion. And we absolutely cannot let go of that. So beyond organic, which is what many people talk about, there are other issues that we can think about and use food as a medium. Organic cannot be elitist. I remember my youngest son sitting down with me on a trip. We were backpacking trip in Indonesia, and he said, "Mom, when it's really happening, that's when everybody has the ability and the right to eat really good, clean food." And I think we all know that that every human being, no matter what economic level they live in, deserves good, clean, healthy food. And I think one of the good things that's happening with our economy shrinking a little bit, or us becoming more conscious of the way we spend our dollar, rather than complaining about how much food costs, or thinking that the value of food comes from a deal, or look at what I got, look how inexpensive this is, that we rethink all the other things we have, and maybe thinking of getting bargains, or maybe not having quite as many shoes, well, maybe not shoes, but thinking about having some of the material goods that we accumulate and paying more for our food. And if those of us that do have enough money to pay more for food think about helping those that don't, then possibly we can balance out this issue of organic being too expensive. This issue of local is really important. And I actually think those of us in California that live in a temperate climate, a Mediterranean climate, has sent out a little bit of an unkind, mean message. Local is important. You absolutely have to start buying your food wherever you live. And I come from cold climates too. I was born and raised in western Pennsylvania, a small coal mining town. My dad had a grocery store. It snowed. In the middle of winter, if somebody had said to me, eat local, I would have looked out my window and said, I don't think there's anything out there but the cows in that field. So I think what the message of local really means is you eat and you purchase in a concentric circle. You start right here. No matter where you live on the planet, you support those farmers, the fishermen, the ranchers, the bread baker, the cheesemaker. Just like the old village market, or the old visit to the village, those of you that travel, you know you go into the village and you buy your food. Well, thinking local is no different right here where we live. You buy everything you can from those people who are still producing our food. And then you move out. In my restaurants, in Northern California, there's not a lot of meat available. There's a little bit, but not a lot. It's not a meat growing region. So I will buy everything else I can. All of our wines are local. I live in a region where there's lots of good wine. Why am I going to buy organic wine from Australia and New Zealand? Even though there are great wines in Australia and New Zealand, I live in the Santa Cruz Mountains where they make wine. So I'm going to make sure those winemakers don't go away, and I'm going to make sure that I know who they are and how they're producing their wine. So all the wines actually on my restaurants, all 3 restaurants, are from organic grapes. And that whole time has changed. It used to be some of the wine was not great that was made from organic grapes, but now it's delicious wine. So I encourage you to think local, wherever you are, but don't be afraid to think of the expansion of the circle. And those of you that, maybe you'll stay here in California, but if you live in other parts of the world, where North Dakota or Canada, where local might mean not too much growing, then another definition of eating from where you are, or another definition of eating fresh, is not just fresh that's shipped from another country. It's frozen, dried, canned, preserved, just like our grandmothers and grandmothers used to do. They would take food at their prime, they would preserve it. It would be more nutritious. They would put it in a can, or they would dry it, or they would freeze it for us. And then it would be packed with nutrition. Most likely it tastes better. I think you all know when you make a tomato sauce in the middle of winter and you're using fresh tomatoes and they came from somewhere else, and you make this sauce and it tastes terrible. But if you open a jar of really good organic tomato sauce and you make your tomato sauce, it has more flavor, unless you can to preserve your own. So fresh eating, or another way of looking at local organic eating, is to consider that which was preserved at its prime. And I actually hope that if we think differently about the way we cook and include those elements of fresh eating into our cooking style, and I do encourage that in the book. Like right now you would be eating a fresh tomato, but in a few weeks or not too long they're going to be gone. You could use sun-dried tomatoes or canned tomatoes. If you consider that, then you actually are going to promote possibly a different way for farmers to make a living. They'll can and they'll preserve for us. They'll preserve their food at their prime rather than just have this abundance in season, and then we buy our, quote, fresh food from other parts of the world. It's not really sustainable. So because you all work here at Google, I would encourage you to use your internal search engine when you're thinking about how you choose your food. When I started in '76, we could not put organic on the menu. They thought it was hippy-dippy, crunchy granola, bad-tasting food. And yes, I was a hippie, but it was delicious food because it wasn't just health food. It was everything, no matter what we had: butter, meat, produce, cheese, whatever we could find was organic. So the real definition of how to shop and buy organic, again, getting back into this intuitive self, is every single thing you buy, if you possibly can find it, that is organic, which means created or produced without the use of artificial chemicals, pesticides, coloring, growth hormones, or plastics. There's a lot of plastic in our food. That any ingredient that you want to cook with or that you want to eat is just plain regular food that's been grown without those additives. That's organic food. It's not really that hard to understand. So in trusting your intuition, when you go to a farmer's market, which I think is the best place to start, either your own garden or a farmer's market, you start with the produce. You start with that which is plant life, or a CSA box. I don't know if any of you have CSA boxes, Community Supported Agriculture. Basically, that's a box that the farmer gives you once a week with whatever they have growing, and it teaches you fresh and local. And you can Google CSA and find out if there's any way of getting a box right here, no matter where you live in the country. When you look at food and you smell it and you hold it, and you use your search engine again to think about, what do I want to do with this? If you look at a potato, you're probably not going to want to bite into it. You're going to want to cook it somehow. And cooking is that simple. Go back to your kitchen and just bake it or fry it, or if you have to, microwave it. If you hold an apple and you smell it, and it smells like an apple, that probably means it's ready to eat. If it doesn't smell like an apple, reconsider. Your intuition will tell you whether any ingredient, your senses, will help you decide. That search engine will help you understand what food is about. And then you go a step further and you think, do I want to cook it? Do I want to eat it raw? Beets, I love them raw and I love them cooked. But rather than think, I can't do that, I can't cook, what does it mean? It's really hard. Just start right there. And then from there, you can go into, all right, what am I going to do with this? How am I going to prepare it? And the best way to really become a cook again, for those of you that aren't, is to consider using 7 ingredients. I'm going to show you a little film clip later of a class I'm doing with Stanford University, where we have students in the Education Department, Masters of Education, that are building curriculum from my garden and my kitchen. And they use 7 ingredients. Fat, olive oil or butter, any kind of fat. Acid, vinegar, lemons, wine. Salt, pepper, sugar. Sugar is a really important ingredient in cooking. And for those of you that have kids or are going to have kids, teaching people that sugar is something that's needed to add to food rather than something that you indulge in is a very important message, especially in this time when, you know, we have this social diseases called diabetes and obesity. So sugar, herbs and spices, fat, acid, salt, pepper, sugar, herbs and spices. If you think about it, you can take just about anything, raw or cooked, and make it taste good. A salad, olive oil, vinegar, salt, pepper, a little sugar, herbs and spices. Roasted vegetables, imagine those simple ingredients. You can make it taste good. So if you are not in your kitchen again, I encourage you just to think of that easy way to come back. So back to this intuition, back to this search engine. You absolutely, as a human being in this time, even when the industrialization of organics has become out of control, you have the right to know where your food comes from. And it's up to you to ask where it comes from. And again, a great way to meet the faces behind the food you eat is to go to a farmer's market. And again, trust that intuition when you say, is it organic? And if they say, yes, it is, but something inside you thinks, I'm not sure if they're telling me the truth, trust it. Go to the next booth that has the certification up, or buy from someone that you feel, that you know, is really offering you something. That's how I learned. There was very little certification. I just learned to trust people. And sometimes they would tell me, oh, my food is organic. And I'd say, really? Are you using Roundup? And I said, they would say, a little bit. And I would say, that is not organic. So you have the right to ask questions and make sure to know where your food comes from. So community is also a big part of organics. And our community is both local and global, and big and small. I work with my local people, and I work with big companies. Coca-Cola, Safeway. The seeds I'm going to be giving you are from Seeds of Change, but they're also owned by Mars. We need to open up to both large and small in buying our food. We start here, but we want to make sure to take care of those global companies are also doing a good job with the way they take care of their people, with the way they grow their food, and with the way they market their food. So a part of cooking, and I think one of the most important elements, and I was asked a few years ago, so what do you do, Jesse? What's new with organic and seasonal, sustainable? And I said, waste management. And a friend of mine said, you can't say waste management. You're into delicious food. I said, no, actually, I'm into waste management because I own restaurants, and it's appalling how much waste we create. So another link to food, which is where I started, that food connects everything. Meetings are over tables. Environmental issues are coming back to food. Finally, we're listening to eat your fruits and vegetables, that does make a difference what we eat. The other part of it is waste management. We have to think about what we do with our food and packaging. I wrote an article called Bagging It, and it was about how do we get to the point where we really are taking cloth bags everywhere, even the farmer's market. And the only way I could do this myself, because I always left them in the car like everyone does, was I refused to take the plastic bag in the store. I would walk out with my food in my arms until I started remembering. So another part of food is, what is the byproduct that we have? If you go to other parts of the world, they use everything. And I think we're starting to realize that that's who we are too. Eat a little less meat. I'm a meat eater. I'm also an alcohol drinker. I love a good martini. I know I have this 80-20 rule. So as much as I'm into organics and into sustainability and doing the right thing and exercise as much as I can, I have an 80-20 rule. And I brought my children up on this. And I'll get back to the meat issue because it's a part of the 80-20 rule, is 80% of the time you are absolutely doing the best you can. You are eating consciously and conscientiously. You know where your food comes from. You're purchasing as much organics as you can. You're willing to spend a little more money for it because you want to keep your local farms here. You don't want them to go away. You realize that if you are buying cheap food anywhere, either that food is grown here and someone's not being paid, and the environment might be hurt by supporting food that is just produced for economic or shelf life reasons here, or it's done if you have to have cheap food, then they're possibly doing it in another part of the world where they're not paying people there to grow our food right, or they might be unconscious of the environment. So paying a little bit more and possibly eating a little bit less, which gets me to the meat issue, that if we change the center of the plate and put maybe about 4 ounces of meat on our plate, we eat all those other delicious things, which I'm looking at your plates and I'm seeing you eating the mashed yams and the salad. There's more of those, what I call yummy side dishes, and a little bit less meat. So that means you can pay a little bit more for the meat. And you're changing the center of the plate. And that has something to do with the bigger picture of how to shift the way we buy our food, and you can afford it a little more. Eat less processed foods. I don't think I have to go into that. It's just, you have no idea what's in processed foods. But with the 80-20, I'll go back to doing everything right. The other side of it, the 20%, when you junk out, when you eat a hot dog at the ballpark, when you eat too many potato chips, when you drink a little bit too much, just be aware of it and actually totally enjoy it. When you're in the middle of choosing your poisons well, which has been done since the beginning of man, and anybody who denies it is lying, when you're doing that, go for it, and realize you can't do it every day because then you very well will gain weight and probably not be as healthy. So the other side of the 80-20 is, and teach your children this too, because if they have their internal search engine, no matter where they are, about how they choose their food, how they eat, when they're doing it right, they will probably be healthier, happy, brighter, more passionate human beings. And along with that, I encourage you all to plant seeds. And I work with a company called Seeds of Change. The only reason for right now for genetically modified foods, in my opinion, is, and I'm not saying this is forever, because there could come a time when there's a reason for it. And it's an issue I'm not going to get into too much, but the only reason for that is marketing and shelf life. Because they're now proving that even meat can be grazed in a way that is sustainable for the soil. If you keep animals healthy and on grasses and moving them, it's okay to eat meat. When they're in confinement, it's not. If you plant the right seeds, which I encourage all of you to do, just in a little pot somewhere, and you watch food grow, and you grow these seeds for flavor. These are Seeds of Change. They're a small organic company that's now owned by Mars. And you watch your food grow, and you realize how long it takes. And you think about, wow, what would it take to harvest this? Look how long I grew it. And I'm going to pull this out of the ground, and I'm going to thin it, and I'm going to take care of it, and then I'm going to wash it and package it. I think you might feel a little bit differently about paying more for your food. So at the end, I would really like all of you to come up and choose something that you'll grow in your backyard or on your balcony or somewhere, and begin to connect from the beginning back to that. Anyone who is really involved in food knows that it's really about dirt or soil. It begins with how you grow your food and where that food comes from. And the new awareness, which I think it is a new awareness, that environmental issues are also a part of food, our water, our soil, our air. Our community is greatly impacted by the way we grow our food. So it's also important to just look at how your food is affecting your local and your global community. And I'm not perfect, and actually, are any of you perfect? None of us are. Oh, they are. I actually would rather sit in a room with somebody who junks out and maybe eats a little bit too much junk food, maybe is 60-40, than someone who is so cerebral about their food and only organic and eating organic carrots until they turn orange. I would much rather be near someone who is real. And forgive myself daily. This is my business and my personal model. When I don't do it completely right, I get up the next morning and I figure out a way to do it just a little bit better. And that goes for food or just about anything we do, because it's really hard in this environment to figure out how to choose our food, how to be environmental, how to feed others, how to be passionate, how to cook, how to sit at a table. And I encourage you to keep it really simple and forgive yourselves when it isn't quite right. So you are the next generation of pioneers. I'm a matriarch now because I've been working with organics for a long time. It's up to you to save the planet. It is up to you to demand where your food comes from. It's up to you to decide how you shift the way you spend, in my opinion, and to consider if you can afford food, to maybe help someone else who can't afford food, whether it's local or global. Tiny bits of money can feed people all over the world. And to make sure to save our farmers. I am a really good American. In my restaurant and in my home, I make sure to buy American food. That is the new definition of gourmet. Local, fresh, sustainable, organic. Buying local is the new definition of gourmet. I'm sorry, it's not those beautiful things in a jar shipped from somewhere else. That's gone. So honor them. Honor those fishermen, those ranchers, and those farmers. And in the future, just remember that the seeds you do plant and how you do cook and the way you do nurture someone through food can have great impact both personally, in your family, and on a business level. A lot of deals are made over tables in my restaurants. Actually, Larry and Sergey ate quite a few meals in one of my restaurants before they started Google. And I'd like to finish with two projects. I'm going to show you a video of one of them that I'm involved in my own community. One is the one I mentioned with the Stanford University students, and it'll be self-explanatory. And it's teaching young student teachers how to build curriculum from the garden to cooking in the kitchen with me, and you'll see how simple it is. And by about the third class with them, they have 4 classes a year with me, with these 7 ingredients I talked about, and just going out in the garden, and basically whatever's growing there, they have to bring in the kitchen and put on some organic whole wheat pasta with the ingredients. By the third class, they look at me and say, "We had no idea how simple this was." And I think, yes, they're going to start cooking. And then I'm very excited to spread the word that Stanford University Hospital has just hired me as an advisor to create a program where we will have the first organic, local, seasonal, very simple menu option on Stanford University Hospital patients' menu. So that means they're finally connecting. The medical world is connecting that, oh, maybe food does have something to do with our well-being. And maybe when someone is ill, sick, and scared in a hospital, if we give them delicious, simple food, it might make a difference. So let's look at the video, and then we'll come back, and hopefully you'll be able to challenge me with some questions.
You know, we have certain things that we need to make us grow big and strong, right?
What Stanford's doing that I find actually quite thrilling, they're taking practical, typical learning about all the different disciplines, from math to science, as we said, to biology.
See over there, we have those green plants?
Yeah?
And then we have the dry plants. So what we do is we mix all those things together, and then you get bugs in here, like this bug here, and those worms.
So first the kids spend some time in the garden with Drew, and that's a very experiential time, and they're connected to the food.
And compost is basically, it's really special soil. Because this has the nutrients that the plants need.
Well, it's here. You got a chance to grow. Wow, you got a big one.
Wow, look at that radish.
They're thinking of using a garden and food, something we all need, that's an everyday part of life, and developing it to a broader, longer-term, bigger picture.
Rosemary sauce.
Yes, How do you feel about going on a field trip like this?
I'm excited.
They just went over of the cycle where you have basically up until fossil fuels you can see in a garden, the sun to the plants, the food to the humans and animals. And so all that can be seen in a garden, so just so that these guys could get real experience with it and see not just isolated instances of gardens, but really see the whole process come through from the plants all the way to the kitchen and eating it.
What they then do is come into the kitchen and they wash it, and I have special knives where they cut it. But I've developed a very simple curriculum that will work anywhere in the country. How you doing here? Everybody doing good with their? You are doing an awesome job. This one we're not cutting. Here's another one. If you just get rid of the dirt. One pot, no recipes, one-page curriculum with 7 ingredients. So these are onions. These are onions that the kids picked in the garden. And what we do is there's always something to eat in the garden. Tossing it in the pan or in a bowl with little olive oil, salt, pepper, citrus, salt, pepper, herbs, and spices. That's it. So the kids then use plates that are compostable. We talk about compostable plates and forks and cups that are made out of corn. We talk about the fact that everything is truly soil to soil. They taste the food that they've harvested, and they eat things they've never eaten before, because sometimes it's kale and onion and beef.
So do you know what you're eating today?
No, thank you.
The deal is you taste a little. Because you helped make that.
We picked lemon, and there's something called breaking bread together. So what I want you... We break bread, and we all take a moment to thank the garden and the planet and each other for the fact that we have good food to eat, and we have family, and that we're a part of community. And it's bigger than anything I've ever done. I have to make sure to keep working in my restaurants because I can get lost in that garden.
Put those in the kitchen?
Yeah, I did that.
You did that, so you'll want to taste them.
Okay, so sorry you couldn't hear that a little bit better. It's the best I could do. My original copy scratched. So, but this was just a moment of again, getting back to how simple it is, that these kids are just connecting back to what we're hoping you do too. Planting a few seeds, realizing what it takes to grow those seeds, understanding good soil, getting into a kitchen and doing something very simple with this. I'm going to read you Indian Summer. At summer's end, when the memory of vacation fades, the routines of school and work urge me back to my kitchen. The days of casual summer dining are numbered, and leisurely meals at the table, surrounded by family and friends, seem important again. Indian summer is a time of large platters, overloaded with the bounty of just-picked goodness. It's a time to celebrate the harvest with family and friends and speak of fond memories of summer, as well as a time to honor and cherish the last summer crops, such as tomatoes and raspberries. I also give open arm welcomes to baby acorn squash, broccoli, kale, chard, and other early fall arrivals. All earn prominent places on my dining room table. Aware of the juxtaposition of seasons that Indian summer presents, I make conserving for the cold months ahead a priority, both at home and at my restaurants. My 2 food dryers, which are easy to buy online, they're not very expensive. My 2 food dryers are working nearly every night, the racks filled with tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, figs, and even berries. At the same time, herbs hang in bunches above my kitchen cabinets. Green tomatoes, cucumbers, beans, baby onions, and even Brussels sprouts are saved in jars filled with herbal or chili-infused vinegar. As the sweetness of summer disappears, I feel satisfied knowing that I've created a kitchen that is ready for winter, which doesn't seem quite appropriate today because it's beach weather down here. But it's just inviting you to what's around the corner. And if you are a cook thinking about freezing, you know, cut up those tomatoes, buy a few extra, I keep saying tomatoes, buy a few extra figs right now, or raspberries, or blueberries when they're in season. Throw them in your freezer, just on a little cookie sheet. And then pull them out when they're frozen, put them in a bag and save them. And imagine in the middle of winter, if you made a cobbler out of apples, because that's a wintry storage fruit, and those figs that you had frozen or those blueberries that you had frozen when they were perfect at their prime, and you remembered and you shared this with someone. And to me, that kind of cooking, that kind of sharing food is really all that being simply organic is about. And thank you for inviting me. Okay, questions about organic, seasonal, sustainable, or how to do it? Yes?
So what's your take on seafood? Like, go wild, or is farming better given how ocean stocks are? Depend on the fish. Like, you know, take salmon, which is something I eat a lot.
All right.
What's your question?
Good question. The question was, how do I feel about sustainable seafood? Because we live in California, and because we live near a coast, again, back to using that which I have, we have the ability, we only serve and I only purchase Pacific Coast. I don't even ship it in from Hawaii. And the only fish I buy is wild from the Pacific Coast. When I buy farm raised, which we do, we buy trout, we buy tilapia, I buy rock shrimp, I buy domestic shrimp, not from other parts of the world. I make sure to know how that farm is, what their growing practices are. At this time, there are very few salmon farms that are doing it the right way. Salmon are carnivorous. They eat a lot of plant life. The farm-raised fish I mentioned are primarily vegetable feeders. So until it gets better, I would say there's nothing wrong with farm-raised fish. It's the way of the future because we're eating up all our wild fish, which is just as bad as farm-raised fish. But we all have to take responsibility, and as I said, it's up to you to find out where your food comes from. It's up to you as the new pioneers to challenge anyone growing your food. Google it, find out where they are, ask them how they're farm raising their fish. Are they using coloring to make that salmon pink, which is typically what they do with farm-raised salmon? Are they using any antibiotics? Are they using any growth hormones to make those fish or that meat grow faster so that they can get more poundage for their dollar? So there's nothing wrong with it. It just has to be done right. Same with meat. The confinement growing of meat right now is a disaster. The byproduct is horrible. The cheap meat you're buying, or the fact that we think we need to eat that much meat means that either we're growing meat in confinement, which means this terrible, terrible situation of chickens and pigs and cows that do not get outside, do not have the right, like every living creature, to just live our life the best we can as long as we're here. That those animals are not, and then often the meat itself is not as healthy, and it's injected with a lot of additives, and the byproduct is terrible. So naturally raised meats or fish or poultry are the way you want to go. And even paying a little more means that you are probably doing a healthier thing for yourself and the planet. And eating a little bit less means you can pay a little more. Yes?
I was interested in grass-fed milks and cheeses.
Mm-hmm.
How do you go about finding these specialty producers in your region for, grass-fed beef or dairy or that sort of stuff?
So the question was, how do you find those people, those farmers, those ranchers, those produce growers, those fishermen that are actually growing the food the right way, especially grass-fed meat? And what I would say is, first of all, go to your farmer's market. I keep saying that, but you live in a place where if you go there, you're probably going to find a small rancher. And again, you're probably going to pay more than you imagine because they're doing very small production. And I would encourage you, when you're buying meat from these people, to think that there are more parts to the animal besides a chicken breast or a fillet or ribeye. Help them figure out ways, and I talk a lot in my book about braising foods and slow cooking. And on my menu right now, we have delicious chicken thighs because I'm paying $14 for chicken in my restaurant. So where you'll find it first is a farmer's market, or do a little search. Wherever you live, Santa Monica, grass-fed meat, ranchers, and you'll find them. Sometimes you can get it, through mail order, but I would say then you're dealing with shipping issues again. First, start here. That's concentric circle. See who's here. You might find there are more people than you know about. And dairy products are another. When I realized the world was changing about 4 or 5 years ago was when I walked into Safeway and there was organic milk, and literally in front of everyone I went, oh my God, the world's changing. Safeway has organic milk, because it started with dairy. And dairy is, when you think about it, again, this is common sense, the byproduct, how something is grown. If the soil's healthy, then that means those onions that are grown in the soil from the bottom up are going to be more nutritious, more delicious, and healthier without anything added. And the same goes with animals or dairy products. I have chickens behind my house, right in the middle of Palo Alto, because I want to know how those eggs are, what they're being fed. And in the restaurant, we have all organic eggs. So when you think about dairy products especially, it's the byproduct of the animal, it's the milk. I would say it's probably one of the most important places to spend your dollar on organic. That or any very fragile fruit or vegetable like strawberries. I would not eat a strawberry that's not organic because of what could be in it. Even if they tell you that the pesticides dissipate, the methyl bromide goes away, the Roundup goes away. I hear that, I don't trust it. I just want real food. I just want to know that there was never anything in this basic element, which is my food. Questions? Yes?
In our economic downturn currently, people are starting to trade down to cheaper alternatives of foods, processed foods like McDonald's, Burger King's, cheap meats, and store products. So, two-part question. One is, how do you promote organic food in such an economic downturn? And two, how would you go about proceeding to make organic foods a very viable economic competitor in terms of getting its cost down to the mass public in competition with the other processed foods that we see out in the market?
Two good questions. I'll answer the first one, which is what to do during this economic time when we don't have as many dollars to spend and still try to commit ourselves to doing that which we think is right. I look at a big picture and a long-term picture, and you're young, and so I'm kind of thinking about you on this planet for a long time. And I would say, if you possibly can, unless you are truly in a dire economic condition. And I actually was on welfare 33 years ago, so I know what it's like to have nothing. But my food was always important, and I bought organic back then. I would say consider some of the other things that you're buying. I'm reiterating. Some of the other things, you may not need another t-shirt. You may not need another electronic device. And with that, possibly still continue to pay for good food, because if you don't, then it's all going to be processed foods. And some of the parts of that production, which I talked about, especially with meat, are going to grow.
I mean, like, I'm in a different case because
Okay.
I have money, right, to
Yeah.
do this, but
Yes.
like other economic demographic brackets, really, it's much harder for them to go for this route at this point. So how can we get help
Well,
them with organics also?
there is some work on getting farmers markets into those communities, because the disaster of low-income communities is there's no fresh food available to them. That's one project you can work on. Another would be find ways to donate to your local food bank, or get some fresh food and take it to, do you have Second Harvest down here? To a food bank. Figure out ways, you will feel so good about yourself if you take a couple bags of fresh whatever and say, share this. Because there's really no other solution right now. It's going to take big companies deciding, rather than investing in some things overseas, they come back home too, and they try to help feed those that are in need, because there's no answer. It's a disaster, because they're eating subsidized food, and subsidized food is our leftovers. It's primarily white food. It makes them, gain a lot of weight, as you know. It's one of the links to obesity. So it's up to us to have a little more to try to figure out how to help them. The second, did that answer it? I don't know how else to do it, but to say do something. And the other question is how to broaden this. And there are some companies. I mean, Whole Foods started. God bless Walter Robb, because he really started a revolution by putting natural foods, by placing natural foods beyond the little health food store to a grocery store. And now some of the others are competing, and I'm sure it's very challenging for him in this economic time, but I'm working with Safeway, and they are really good people. That when they send a truck out to the coast to drop off at their stores in a farmland area, they fill that truck with local farm products and bring it back. So some of the grocery stores, some of the bigger companies, even Walmart has some organic product. Some of the lower level food service operations are offering organics now. So I think if you look at this big picture and think long term, there already are changes. They're starting to be priced a little more they're starting to position themselves a little more for the average person. Does that answer your question? Keep going. No, keep going.
I don't know.
Because this is important.
I was just thinking, it's like in terms of farmers, loads and loads of corn going to processing centers, and I just find it a paradox that processed food is a lot cheaper than organics.
They're subsidized.
It's just purely because
A lot of it's subsidized. And, there's an important thing called the Farm Bill, and I really hope you all vote right. And though I can't talk about it, I think you know what I'm talking about. It's up to the young to change the current situation. That we pay attention to things here, and we don't subsidize them, that we make sure our farmers do not go away. And I mean, I've said it about, probably I keep repeating myself, but if we don't pay for our food grown here and pay a fair price, they will be gone and it will be subsidized. So none of that makes sense, because we don't think that way. You're so right on. And that's why by supporting smaller local people, you're putting your dollar in the right place. Is that? Okay. That's back to find anything local you possibly can. No more challenges? Well, good, maybe, yes. Darn, I was going to send you out for dessert.
I mean, we talk a lot about what we want to do in the future, but I'm kind of curious of how we got into this position in the first place. I mean, when did we forget that what real food is? I mean, do you have any insights into that?
Good question. When did we forget what real food was? Those of you that have a rich ethnic background, which I do, I mean, I remember my grandmother cooking and my father grew the biggest tomatoes in the backyard. I've traveled all over the world where they think we're crazy in the Western world. How did we get disconnected? We got disconnected when they started producing commodity foods. And what they did when they started shipping it, the industrialization of food, when they started shipping it all over. When we started getting so busy that we stopped cooking, which is why I think the next trend, my answer to is what's next. The next trend is people are going to be cooking again. Even if it's just a little bit, they're going to be back in their kitchens, kicking off their shoes, opening a bottle of wine and sharing food with one another. When we start doing that more, we'll bring it back. So I think we started thinking the value of food was not taking care of ourselves, taking care of our family, connection to where we lived. We lost it. Completely disconnected. We don't know where our food comes from. There are kids that have no clue that chickens have anything but a breast and come in a plastic package. So we got lost when we separated. And those of you from rich ethnic backgrounds know that when you lived in a village, you connected, and they eat the whole animal. They would never not eat every part of it. Am I answering that? And what to do about it? What to do about it is, you know, you sat here during your lunchtime, and I'm hoping each of you go out and decide that you're willing to spend a little more for your food, that you absolutely want to know where it came from, that you're 80-20, you don't do it all the time, you also have a really good time in life, you don't get too uptight, and that you're really conscious and conscientious and know that you can change things through the food system in our political arena. It's called the politics of food. It's called food justice. Okay, dessert time. Thank you. Oh, come get seats. I hope you'll do this, please.